All right, we're live.
Good afternoon and welcome to the March 25th meeting of the Downtown Development Authority. If staff could take the roll call, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Jackie Babcock.
I'm attending remote from Malvern, Florida.
Greg Ballline.
Present. I am attending remotely from East Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County.
Kristen Clark. No. Jim Kroom.
Present, attending remotely from Leelanau County.
Peter Dewan.
Present, attending virtually from Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County.
Luke Hackney. Don't see Luke. Michael Kruger.
Present, attending remotely from East Lansing.
George Lahanas. Oh, George. Ruben Levinson.
Present, attending remotely, Lansing, Ingham County.
Jeff Smith.
Here, attending remotely in East Lansing, Michigan.
Mayor Stevens.
Present, attending virtually from East Lansing, Michigan. And I'd like to let the record reflect that Kristen Clark has joined us as well.
Sure, thank you. Kristen Clark.
You're muted, Kristen.
Present, joining from East Lansing.
Thank you, Kristen. And that completes the roll call.
Great, thank you. We have the agenda as presented by staff. Are there any changes to our agenda? I'll make a motion to approve the agenda and ask for a second.
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Stevens. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Please note that Luke Hackney has just joined us and is present.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have the minutes from our February 25th meeting. Are there any changes to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented and ask for a second.
Second, Stevens.
Seconded by Mayor Stevens. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are passed unanimously. We have our February 2021 financial report. Chad, will you be discussing that?
Yes, Chair.
Great.
All right, here we are, our February 2021 financial report. Focusing on the second column for the current month transactions, we'll just do a quick rundown to, if we could scroll down, Adam. Thank you. Now it's showing up some salaries and some wages that were used for some of our placemaking projects. Of course, that includes some insurance, life insurance, dental, things like that. I'd like to point out the legal services at $4,402 for the month of February. And then a little further down, our project development fund is showing up for $12,830 expenditures for that, the month of February. And so if we go down to our treasurer's report, thank you, our total expenditures for the business support program is $14,447.98, and that's the project development fund expenditures and the wages included. With that, we can open up for any questions.
Are there any questions for staff on the financial report? I had a question, Chad.
Sure.
Item 5990, reappropriated equity, 81,500. Can you speak to what that is?
I actually would try to call upon Heather, see if she could answer that for us.
Chair, I'm sorry, where did you say where was the question?
It's reappropriated equity of 81,500.
It's a negative amount there.
5990.
The first page, Adam.
The account fund is 5990.
Yeah, Chair, I'll look into that and get you an answer.
Okay. Any other questions regarding the financial reports? Let's move on to item 2.2, the bond payment estimates. Chad, are you also addressing that?
I'll just go ahead and provide a brief summary. This is the bond payment schedule that we've been displaying here for the past several months. Nothing has changed since the last time we posted this. And with that, we can answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Hearing none, we'll move on. I also want to note that City Manager Lahanas has joined us as well. If we can take a look at the DDA's fiscal year 2022 budget, item 2.3.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I do want to try to explain the reappropriated equity question. So essentially my understanding is those are funds that are carried over from the previous year that are reappropriated to various programs, but I'll look into that and double check for you.
Okay, thank you.
So we're going to discuss the DDA draft budget. As you can see here up on the screen, we will have to do a public hearing in April, and then this would have to be adopted also by council. And so today I'll take you through a brief overview of each line item. Give me 1 second. All right, so what you're seeing here, this last column, the 2022 finance review, that is the final draft budget that's been basically essentially quote unquote approved by finance up to this point. This column to the left of it is this is what staff estimated to come up with, and then the finance review is finance input on those dollar amounts, which do change every now and then to make sure we're all matching and aligning. And so for the property taxes, there is a slight decrease in TIF 1 capture, but that's offset by the TIF 2 capture for 2022. The state capital grants here, the 50,000. That's the MEDC match from the Public Spaces, Community Places crowdfunding campaign that came in for the Place project. Our lease and rental income is going to remain the same at 9,000. The patronicity placemaking campaign donations, so above that 50,000 is from MEDC, their match. Here, this dollar amount, 64 and some change. That equates to all the donations that we've received. Let's see, we have our miscellaneous revenue with Crispin Company as part of this City Center Project Development Agreement, basically remaining the same at $20. Our Place Project carryover fund. So when the reappropriated equity that I just mentioned. So what we're saying here is we're estimating that we're going to carry over this balance from the Place project in the fiscal year 2022. And we anticipate spending the other portion of those funds prior to that. See the gain and loss at $40,000 right here that you're seeing. That's income to the DDA from the Park District redevelopment, part of the DDA interlocal agreement. There we get a series of payments over a 7-year period as part of that agreement. It fluctuates year to year. I believe last year it was $15,000, and so this next fiscal year is going to be $40,000, and then it jumps up and then back down throughout that 7-year period. The lease and rental income for Evergreen properties, you can see we're estimating around $272,000, and that's reduced to $231,000 for fiscal year. It's broken out by property, as you can see. The interest income is restricted, remains the same. Reappropriated equity. This is just a summary of the above dollar amounts. And then we're getting into salaries and wages. You're going to see increase on the contingent wages here. And this is for place project implementation. Think of the downtown underground farmers market, and then some of the spring and summer events that we have planned that will require part-time staff and or interns. These direct charges, the benefits are associated with that part-time staff. Let's see, fringe benefits, operating supplies increased from 200 to 1,000. Our municipal service agreement with DPW, it's increased slightly from 123,000 to 140. Our legal services, if you recall, we had $12,000 allocated for this line item. We estimate that we're going to go over this fiscal year, and so we've increased that for the next fiscal year, for fiscal year 22. Our audit services are standard. Communications for the refuse rooms, pretty standard. Our dues and memberships, that's for MEDA, the Downtown Association, that staff are members of, that help keep us up to date on current trends and best practices. Training and travel, we've allocated some monies there. For the MEDA conference, we just attended one last month, and then we anticipate attending another one next year as well. And then here's our project development fund. You can see a breakdown, the Arch project. This is the Mural project at Division Street Garage, the newspaper racks, the Place project carryover we discussed previously, and then projects to be determined, and then the Smart Zone rent backstop. And all those amounts are broken out here. Repairs and maintenance, bench repair and painting. If you can visualize the benches at Division Street Garage that are there, they are in need of repair and painting. And so that's what that line item is. And then we've allocated some monies for just miscellaneous maintenance items that we have not anticipated. City computer rental, pretty standard line item. It's slightly increased for fiscal year 22. And then here's our the bonds, the interest, the agent fee, and principal. You can see we were at 332,000. That's what we're estimating for fiscal year 21, and we've increased that slightly to 340,000 for fiscal year 22. Contract services. So this is for property maintenance and management of the Evergreen properties. Again, line items are broken out here. The total over $38,000. Insurance bonds, pretty standard, slight decrease. Repairs and maintenance. These are for the Evergreen properties. You'll see a pretty significant number here for 314. That is for the roofs, windows, gutters, in addition to the normal maintenance that we typically would do throughout the year. These are capital improvements that are needed at this time. And then, of course, our permit and license fees for those properties. Let's see, we have taxes for each of the Evergreen properties. Again, broken out line item here.
Hey, Adam, does this budget include the demolition stuff that's proposed?
No, sir, it does not.
So it's assuming, okay, gotcha.
Yes. The budget planning was all in the works prior to this, the demo being considered.
Okay.
The Evergreen bonds, principal and interest payments are here. Consistent at 110,000 for the principal payments, and then the interest payments here, they go down slightly because the interest rates are going down as well. Here is a summary of your expenses and revenues. You can see we balance out here after the finance review. We have a balanced budget. And so I know that this is a lot of information to go through in a short amount of time. You do still have time to go through this in more detail prior to the public hearing and council's decision on adopting the budget. But at this time, I'm happy to do my best to answer any questions.
Thank you, Adam. Are there any questions of board members with regard to the budget? Jim?
Not necessarily the budget, but perhaps going back to the current financial report, is there an amount that is available for expenditures in this fiscal year that's unallocated? Were we to want to do other projects and
Are
so on?
you referencing the project to be determined fund?
Just any funds that are available. I mean, if there's excess funds, we could obviously choose to move them around, but
Yeah.
and thinking about items on the agenda or not on the agenda that if there are excess funds, the DDA may want to undertake.
Yes, sir. Let me see if I can.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't that 53,000 technically we could use that this year if we wanted in the
53,000. What's that in reference to?
in discretionary? So it was 81,000, but you said we'd be using 25,000 this year or so, and then you had earmarked about what 50? I don't remember.
I think it was 57,000.
Right.
For fiscal year 22.
Yeah, but isn't that technically up for grabs now, or am I mistaken?
No, those are dedicated towards the place project.
Okay.
That 57,000 that we reference in the fiscal year 22 budget. Is that what you're referencing?
Maybe.
So there's reappropriated funds, carryover balance for the place project. All we're saying is we anticipate to spend up to this amount in this fiscal year, which ends June 30th. And then we're going to carry those over to next fiscal year. And those are specific to the place project. There are other funds in the project to be determined fund as well that could be allocated for next year. But this year, to answer Jim's question, yeah, we still have monies remaining in the business relief program. You can see we have $40,000 here. Well, 43,000 because we did receive a credit. Someone did not accept the grant. And then projects to be determined, we still have over 78,000 there. And so if your question is, do we have balances remaining in funds that we can shift around? Currently, the answer is yes.
Thank you. Are there additional questions for staff? Luke, did you have a follow-up?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions with regard to the proposed budget? Hearing none, we'll move on. Are there any written communications?
No, Chair.
I think I received an email this morning from Sarah Weston with the Jaffe, Raitt, Hewer, and Weiss law firm with regard to an item that's on our agenda. So I presume...
Yes, Chair. The reason that is not incorporated into written communications is our policy. Our written communications have to be submitted by 5 p.m. the day prior to the DDA meeting.
Okay, I'll just make note that I received an email with regard to an item on our agenda from a Sarah Weston.
Yep, and we'll certainly have that posted on our next meeting's agenda.
Okay, thank you. This is the portion of the meeting where we invite the public to weigh in if they have any questions of the DDA under item 3.2 communications from the audience. Do we have any callers, Chad?
We certainly do, Chair. Thank you. Caller with the last three digits of 963, you're going to be unmuted and given 5 minutes to speak. And if you do not wish to speak, please just say pass. Caller 963, you've been asked to be unmuted.
Hi. Thanks, Chad. This is Alice Strager. Just a few questions. One, could we get that email from Sarah Weston sooner rather than later, since it sounds like it's relevant to something on the agenda and we're reporting on what's on the agenda today? So if staff could attach that somehow, that would be helpful, or maybe they could just email it to me. Secondly, I think based on questions I've put to Heather and to Jill in the past, reappropriated equity is fund balance use. And so my impression is that when you see parentheses for reappropriated equity under revenue, that's actually savings, but it seems like it would be helpful to have fund balance specifically. Maybe that's on that finance report, but I don't quite understand where fund balance is being shown. Fund balance is your savings. And then on item 2.2, I was hoping staff could explain, that's the bond payment schedule. It has a note on it that says, does not include net income from rental of Evergreen properties. So I'm trying to understand, does that mean that the amount shown is not reduced by the net income from the rental? In other words, I think item 2.2's attachment is showing the full amount owed, but I just want to be clear about that. And then also, why does the interest go down from 2019 to 2023, but then the interest goes back up? I would expect interest to keep going down, so that's confusing to me. Maybe it's the way the bond was structured, but it's kind of confusing. I do see the balloon payment that's coming due in a few years. Well, not balloon payment, but the increase in payments coming due. You all may not know, staff restructured that debt a while ago to give you more time to deal with things. And then I just got an email from a reader that I thought was a question I could just pass on to the DDA. It was this quote, I have a question that I hope you all can explain. How is it that the Downtown Development Authority, comprised of individuals not elected by the people of East Lansing, has the authority to determine what is to happen to publicly owned properties, as seems to be the case with the Evergreen properties planned for demolition to enable construction of FCU's new building, unquote. So because I saw this, I went back and looked at the ballot language that was presented to voters a year ago, seems like 10 years ago, in March 2020. And I would note the ballot language at that time was straightforward. It was a real estate sale, simply. The property was appraised, the appraisal price was used, the finances of the deal were on the ballot. It was very simple. So that has changed. And this reader's question goes to the question of how it is we got from something that was a voter authorized sale to something that's a lot more complicated and not handled by people who are elected directly. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, next caller with the last three digits of 723. You'll be unmuted and given 5 minutes to speak. If you're not wish to speak, please just say pass. If you're here for an agenda item, go ahead and mention which agenda item you're here for. You've been asked to be unmuted. 723. Okay.
Oh, they're unmuted now.
Hello, this is Kelly Ellen. I'm not sure why I was asked on mute, but I am here today on behalf of Landshark. I'm an attorney for Joe David.
All right, thank you. Next caller, caller 930. You've been asked to be unmuted and given 5 minutes to speak. If you do not wish to speak, please just say pass. Caller 903, you've been asked to be unmuted.
Hello, this is Victor Loomis. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I never know with my phone if it's muted or otherwise. Apologize. I'm here again today to listen into your discussion. Again, I'm here at the request of many of our fellow citizens. But I do have three observations I'd like to pass along to you as you enter into your discussion today. From a professional perspective, and looking at the data and numbers that I have seen that you are publishing, the numbers on your Evergreen properties do not trace. And that's an important consideration. I think they also avoid some key detail. And I think they need to be reviewed by you. I think you need to make sure that in the end analysis, those numbers are tracing. My second observation, I have concern about taking the Evergreen apartments, I think the address is 314, offline. I had that concern before you went through your budget and I heard your budget numbers. I think the revenue coming off those apartments are very important as we move forward, particularly with the bond payment schedule. My last observation, and I made it the last time I made comments. Again, from a professional perspective, we don't need any more leverage. The velocity of leverage in a contraction can be suffocating. It's quick and it's unforgiving. And I'm concerned that on how this transaction for the Evergreen properties is now structured over the next 2 years in conjunction with the would-be non-recourse bond on Center City, which you just did a first payment bailout on, could very well lead us to an expanding position of leverage. I'm very concerned about that. Those are my three observations. Thank you for the opportunity to pass them along.
Sorry, could I ask a question of the caller, Mr. Dwellin?
Yes, go ahead, Mayor Stevens.
Mr. Loomis, thanks for being with us. Thanks for joining us for the DDA. Could you expand on your first point when you say numbers don't track? Could you give a little bit of context to that assertion?
I'm sorry, the monitor was telling me I was muted.
You are unmuted right now.
Well, she was talking to me, so I didn't hear the question.
I was just asking for a little bit more detail in your first question and assertion that I believe the quote was numbers don't track on the payments there. So I was wondering if you could give a little bit of extra context for that.
It wasn't track, it was trace.
Sorry, traced.
And yeah, I think the numbers, I've got to check my notes here, but is the rental income for 314 Evergreen in the spreadsheet reflective of what is there? And there was some question about that when you went through the budget. And again, when I looked at a couple of the schedules, I couldn't get the footings from one schedule to trace to the footings of another schedule. So somewhere in the numbers, something is not consistent. And that's where I think you need to review the numbers. I'm a little bit handicapped because I don't have the detail in front of me, which I'm accustomed to having. But what I saw raised enough concern that I'm going to pass that on to the DDA board, that let's make sure that in the end analysis, one schedule, the footings trace to the footings of any subsequent or additional schedules.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, our next caller is the last three digits of 927. Caller with the last three digits, 927. You've been asked to be unmuted. You're given 5 minutes to speak, and if you do not wish, please just say pass. All right, moving on. Caller Daryl Slamiani, you'll be unmuted, given a chance to speak. If you do not wish to speak, if you're here for an agenda item, please just state the agenda item. Thank you.
Pass. We're here for the Graduate Hotel agenda item.
Thank you, sir. Jan Hadjick, you've been asked to be unmuted, given the opportunity to speak. And if
Hello,
you're not-
everyone. This is Jan Hayek. I'm here for agenda item 4.2 with the Graduate Hotel.
Thank you. Jason Nelson, you've been asked to be unmuted.
Hello, everyone. Here with agenda item 4.2, Graduate Hotels.
Thanks, Jason. Joe David, you've been asked to be unmuted.
Hi, I pass. I'm here for the agenda item related to the land chart.
Thank you.
Well, if you want to stay on. No.
Josh Mincer,
Hello, Josh Mincer. I am here for agenda item 4.2 for the Graduate Hotel.
thank you. Jessica Maury,
Hi, yes, this is Jessica Maury. I'm also here for agenda item 4.2.
thank you, Jessica. Lisa Miller,
Hi, yes. Hi, everyone. I'm also here for agenda item 4.2, Graduate Hotel.
thank you. Martin Hanson,
Good afternoon. Also here for item 4.2.
thank you. Scott Hogan, Scott Hogan, you've been
I'm
given
here. I'm just observing. Pass.
Thank you. And David Pearson, you've been asked to be unmuted. You've given an opportunity for 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, David Pearson, on behalf of the MSU Federal Credit Union, not here for 4.2, I'm glad to say. I noticed that you don't have the letter this morning from Sarah Weston, who represents 327 Abbott, Paul Vlahakis's company that owns the Dublin Square. But it makes it easier for me to introduce the subject that you have on your agenda today related to the construction of the new credit union building. What the letter really does is it reiterates a letter that was sent to the credit union at the beginning of November, the day before the scheduled closing for the sale of the property, which in essence warned against any encroachment or interference with the Dublin Square property and threatened suit if anything like that were considered. There were discussions with Paul Vlahakis, which didn't yield any solution at all. The overall issue is that much of downtown already, and certainly much of what is planned for downtown, both old form and new form, is buildings that are built right next to each other, right up to the property line. And in fact, in this case, Mr. Vlahakis had previously proposed a development for his property, which would have been built along similar lines. And so the credit union building was built assuming that to be the case. In fact, it's so common in Michigan that there are statutes that actually deal with sorting out how to protect both property owners when one or both build to the property line. When it was clear we couldn't get an agreement with the Dublin Square owners, the credit union looked at, well, should we go ask a court to try to settle this? The problem with courts, as you know, is they take a very long time, they're expensive, and the results are frankly uncertain. You don't know how it's going to come out. The decision was made to look at reducing the size of the building and then seeing if there was a way to build it without in any way encroaching on the Dublin Square, not even allowing the crane to swing over the Dublin Square property, whether it was loaded or not. The discussions with staff are frankly what led to the proposal before you today, because what it would allow, at bottom, what it would allow is it allows the building to be built. Because we can't seem to get any agreement at all with the Dublin Square owners, this way the building can be built without in any way interfering with or encroaching on the Dublin Square property. What the credit union wanted to do was to try to participate in that in a way that works for the DDA, not just for the credit union building. So what the DDA will do is pay half of the cost of the demolition, not only of the 2 parcels that are to be used for the staging and for the crane erection, but also 334, which is the building to the north, which the DDA had already determined to demolish. So the half payment will include that. There will be a fee for the use of the 2 parcels, which over the course of the construction will be probably around or a little more than $100,000 over the course of that. The demolition cost is estimated to be $200,000 for the 3 buildings. So the credit union's half of that would be $100,000. In addition, the closing is scheduled for the first week of April, but the credit union will allow the city, because construction is not scheduled to start until August, the city can continue to use parking lot 4 as a parking lot without any cost to the city. I don't know the numbers for how much income is derived, but in terms of convenience, it is used as the parking lot for Dublin Square. So at least until construction starts and that property is really needed, it will
30
be
seconds.
For their use. There are other specific items that are in the staff report. I'll be here to answer questions. The number that ends in 927 that didn't get on in time is Jeff Tooley. He is Granger's project manager, and he can also answer questions if those come up, if there are ones that are specific to construction. Thanks.
Thank you. Are
And
there any
that
additional callers, Chad?
no, Chair, that completes the queue.
Okay, thank you, callers. And we may come back to, as we get through additional agenda items, come back to some of the people that have called in if there are questions of the board. Are there any communications from staff?
Just briefly, Chair, just want to update folks on the Place project. The Mass Madness Bracket Challenge kicked off yesterday. That's basically a March Madness challenge using selfies with folks with their mask on in downtown or at a downtown business. The Last Weekend Warriors program is this Saturday, and Zeke the Wonder Dog is expected to make an appearance. So stay tuned for that. Hope to see some of you guys down there. The 4th Downtown Underground Market is this Sunday. We've made some more updates to the Explore Downtown East Lansing web app. We pushed those out yesterday. The Place Project / CED internship posting went down yesterday, and so we'll be reviewing those applications and hopefully interviewing early soon in the near future. The second round of K through 12 artwork is currently on display in downtown businesses. The third round expected to be installed in mid-April. Another round of installation of infrastructure installation will begin this Friday and into next week downtown, so stay tuned for that. We're in the planning stages of the parklet systems. We're planning the design and beginning to really hone in on location placement of the parklets. We're also in the early stages of planning the art murals that will go on the wall partitions that are being installed at the Division Street Garage. And we continue to brainstorm, spring and summer programming activities to launch. So still all ears. Let us know if you have any input.
Thank you, Adam.
Mr. Chair, do you mind if I?
Go ahead, Mayor Stevens.
Mr. Cummins, appreciate the work that's been done on the Place project. I do have to say that, I think that this has been great for the community, but on a personal level, I made the mistake of sending some of the things that I had bought from our downtown farmers market to family, and now I'm required to send probably 10 jars of garlic Dijon mustard to several members of my family throughout the state. So I have to tell you that, you know, you guys got to pick some less great people to have in that market, because it's going to hurt my bank account overall if you keep putting great people down there.
Well, bad for your bank account, good for the place project, because that means it's reaching its desired outcomes, which is get people to spend money downtown.
Well, I you know, jokes aside, the project has done very, very well. It's a very unique thing, and I just want to say again as many times as I can, I think this builds in a design for how you do downtown activities in the future beyond COVID. I want us to really, really think about the resources that we expend right here, of course, to support businesses during a very difficult time, but the opportunity that this type of infrastructure puts in place for us in the future to have summer events, to have farmers markets in our downtown, to encourage more vendors, to encourage more people to come into the downtown that for years have decided to avoid downtown because of the perception that we have had. And I think that this is changing that perception, regardless of whether it's a silver lining of a bad situation. I think that staff has done an excellent job of this. And I just want to encourage members of the DDA that this is something that we should encourage far beyond COVID, that this is something that's really good for us regardless. So.
Well, I can tell you for myself, and I believe from my team members, we really appreciate those kind words. We are working hard, and our goal is exactly what you stated, to kind of make that shift and get those people back downtown and engaged.
This is what we want out of the DDA. Everybody here has that same vision, and we have a great vision for our downtown. People live, work, and shop, eat, and all members of our community are included in that. And I think this is a good way to encourage that correct direction. So,
thank you, Mayor Stevens.
Great, thank you for the comments, Mayor Stevens. Let's move on to our business agenda item 4.1. It's a request.
Chair, I think Ruben Levinson wanted to speak.
I'm sorry, Ruben.
Yeah, sorry, just a quick question on Mayor Stevens' comments and Adam's comments. I got a chance to get down there too, and it is very nice to have that opportunity. I was curious, do we have any sort of tracking metrics to be able to see what the increase in traffic is on the weekends with the farmers market, the place project, and how is it doing for the vendors?
So I know there's surveys that have been distributed to the vendors, and we're counting the number of people walking through the door. So for example, I believe is our second market, we had 700 people come through the door in 4 hours. And keep in mind, that's with a capacity limitation. The first market, vendors sold out. Second market, I heard went even better. Third market still went well, not as great as the last. And I don't have hard data to show anyone or analyze, but just talking to business owners, they're telling me that they are seeing foot traffic from the market days. And then the Weekend Warrior program, I know that, you know, just talking to a business owner, he said that he saw a 20% increase in sales that day that the Warriors were out there. I know the Art Lab said that they had record-breaking numbers of foot traffic come through the door to come see the K-12 business pop-up art displays. So we're going to continue to evaluate those things. We're also looking at parking numbers on those on certain days, and I can tell you, first analysis is like a 242% increase in parking just on a one market Sunday, and that's just evaluating 3 of the garages. So. We hope to have that hard data. It's just really hard to get your hand.
I'm sure it is, and those all sound good. I maybe being too business-like here, but all I can see is Blue Owl's numbers. You know, Blue Owl Coffee being involved in that, I watch our numbers. We're still sitting about 40% of our normal daily volume there, and that's right there in the plaza. So it's an indicator at least, but we're about 40% of our normal daily volume since pre-COVID. Come up from about 15% was the worst. And that's about right because we're only allowed 50% capacity still. So that seems close. The other thing I wondered with all the efforts you're doing and money spent downtown in the place projects, the farmers market, is there a target? Is there something we're shooting for, and are we tracking to that at all?
The target is to provide more attractive places, more things for people to do. You know, if you look at Division Street Garage in that overhang, it's a really cool space, but it's not a space that I'm going to, not just me, but others have said, it's not going to draw you out of your house to go say, hey, let's go to that really cool spot, right? And so we're trying to change that there to incorporate all these placemaking attributes that will have people saying, hey, let's go hang out down at Division Street. That's a cool place to hang out at. The ultimate goal is to make that shift from just all of our eggs in one basket, if so to speak, as far as our economy being so dependent on the student population. The permanent residents, I've spoken to a lot of them, and they want to come and be engaged in downtown. We just have to provide them a reason to come down, especially during this time. And so that's what we're trying to achieve. It's a long-term strategy. I don't anticipate seeing significant impacts from it in the near future, but over the long term, as we continue to build programming that can be implemented years to come, that's what we're hoping to achieve, is to draw those permanent residents down.
Thank you. My last comment, and maybe I don't think it comes up on our agenda, is just that as the weather's getting nicer, I'd love to see more discussion on moving that stuff back outdoors onto Albert Street, right there in the middle of everything where people can see it and not, you know, to go under a garage to get to it or whatever.
Yeah, definitely a good consideration.
If I could just comment on something that Adam and Ruben, a little bit to your question. So interesting data that I don't think is necessarily the most achievable to get in East Lansing, but we've seen throughout the country is the tendency for folks, once they use a parking garage once, they're more likely to use it again versus them not wanting to use one previously. But in general, when people come into an area and they become comfortable with the area, they're more likely to come into that area again. And I think that Adam hit the nail on the head, which is really that our economy is focused on the student market in our downtown. And I think that we're shifting from that. And I think that we really want to encourage things like that. But really, that has to happen. We can have the incredible businesses such as Blue Owl that are in our downtown that encourage, a diversity of folks that are down there utilizing them and, not having a summer drought, let's say, for our businesses here. However, that also needs to be combined with folks in the area and in our community really getting reintroduced to the downtown. And I think that needs to happen in a really direct and purposeful way. And so I think that, it's kind of like the build and they will come approach is probably not going to work in this situation. It's really got to be us putting our, one foot in front of the other and making sure that folks in the community know that we're going to put a priority on making sure that this is a downtown for everybody. So, again, that's anecdotal. I know you're talking about data that is really, really important. And I'm glad that it's being tracked to a degree. And I think that it would be interesting to know, maybe even survey of residents, right? When was the last time you came to the downtown? Would this event entice you to come to the downtown? Or did you attend one of our farmers market, maybe even exit surveys for folks that come to the farmers markets, right? To say, when was the last time you were actually in downtown besides this, right? See if we get any like first time people. Would you be more likely to come back in now that you've been here? That type of thing would be interesting to know. But I do think that it has to be just a direct effort to really pitch it to the residents and folks in our community that there's things for everybody in downtown East Lansing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the comments, everyone. Let's move on to our business agenda. Item 4.1, the request from 214 Group LLC for city liquor license and entertainment license.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This was brought to
I was trying to interject. I would like to just go ahead and make a motion to recuse Greg Ballline as the landlord of the property on item 4.1.
It's been offered by Luke. I'll second, supported by myself, to recuse Greg Ballline from the discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you, board.
Any opposed? All right, Greg, you're recused. We'll call you back in.
I did have one more thing, just in full disclosure, like they are, the Land Shark is a client of Retrodux, my company. I just wanted to disclose that, and it's at your discretion whether or not you want to recuse me.
The fact that you've made it noticed that they are a client of yours, I don't see a reason why you couldn't participate in the conversation unless any other board member feels differently. I think that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Adam, could you
Yes,
proceed
thanks,
to
Chair.
provide the background?
Yeah, so we discussed this at P&I. I believe that was last week. This is a request from 214 Group LLC for a city liquor license and entertainment license at 101 East Grand River Avenue, AKA the Land Shark. So, 214 Group has started the transfer of the ownership of the state liquor license from Land Shark, which doesn't typically require a city approval. However, the city has its own liquor license approval process under policy resolution 1989-2. So, and that's the alcoholic beverage licenses for consumption on the premises and entertainment licenses. But, since we don't typically require approval of the transfer, the reason why we're here requesting that approval is that the previous owner allowed the city's liquor license to expire, and that's why we're here today. Just a side note, both fire and police, they've signed off, and the buildings inspectors continue to make their visits, and will make their recommendation prior to council's consideration for approval. And, staff have determined that the liquor license application is complete and compliant. And so staff recommend the DDA consider recommending approval of the city liquor license to city council.
Thank you, Adam. Are there questions of board members for staff? I'm going to make a motion to approve the staff's recommendation to recommend approval of the city liquor license, recommend that to the city council, and ask for a second.
Luke Hackney.
It's been seconded by Luke. Any further discussion on the motion?
Could I just have a question for staff?
Sure, Mayor Stevens.
So I know that this was something that we talked about a little bit at the subcommittee meeting, but have you gained any more information about like this law that we have and its concurrence with state law, and making sure that we're still aligned and kind of allowed to do this in the same way?
Not since our last meeting, but that is on our to-do list to align those. And
can we just make sure that that's done before it comes to council?
Yeah.
Yep.
Do
All
our
right.
best.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions with regard to the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of supporting it, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously to recommend approval to the city council. We'll move on to item 4.2, consideration of a special use permit application for Collegiate Catering East Lansing LLC for the property at 133 Evergreen Avenue to allow for the restaurant to serve alcoholic beverages. Adam?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. As you stated, this is an application for a special use permit approval to allow the restaurant at the Graduate Hotel located at 133 Evergreen Avenue to serve alcoholic beverages. The subject property is Zone B3, City Center Commercial District. And I believe David Haywood and Jake Parcell from the Planning Department are online to speak more to it.
Hi, everyone. It's Jake Parcell. I'll hop right into it. So this application is for a ground floor cafe with coffee, beverages, beer, and I believe wine, and a small menu in the lobby of the hotel. It has a maximum occupancy for the entire lobby of 200 people. I know the staff report says 94, but we parsed that out a little more at the Planning Commission meeting last night. And there's 82 seats available, intended for people to get something checking into the hotel, or coming through to move throughout the lobby and consume. And then also this is for the rooftop restaurant, which includes indoor and outdoor seating. Each space is approximately 1,200 square feet. Each one has 48 seats available. This was at the Planning Commission last night. They voted to recommend approval to council. A few notable things that came out of it were that the conditions of approval added that there should be no more than 100 people consuming alcohol or being served alcohol at a single time in the lobby. This is kind of mirroring a condition of approval that's on the Marriott conditions of approval for 300 MAC. And also, it's not really a condition of approval, I don't think formally, but the applicant has agreed to this. There's concern at the Planning Commission over glass being used on the rooftop in case it fell off of the edge. So the applicant has agreed to use plasticware on the rooftop outdoor patio area. But other than that, I'm open for questions, and the applicant has several people here that I'm sure are more knowledgeable overall of their project that can chime in as well for a couple more intricate things.
Thank you, Jake. I have a question, and I think I didn't get a chance to see the Planning Commission meeting last night, but it appears to me from their previous conversations, the issue was just really knowing what type of barrier exists on the top of the building. It wasn't really a matter of trying to dictate whether it's going to be plasticware or glassware. It was just more a matter of the assurance that there was an appropriate barrier. So if inadvertently someone knocked over a glass or a can of Guinness or whatever it happens to be, that there wouldn't be a public health challenge or endangering someone walking on the street below. So can someone respond to that?
There's a 54-inch glass barrier around the exterior of the patio. The applicant also stated that they use plastic at a different location and that they're amenable to doing it at the East Lansing location as well.
Okay. Are there any questions for either the applicant or for staff from board members? Hearing none, I'm happy to make a motion to approve the special use permit application and ask for a second.
Or second.
Seconded by Luke. Any additional conversation to that motion?
I just want to note, and I don't think we often do this, but this is a project that has been a long time coming. And we obviously saw the apartment building come online. And I think honestly, one of my first votes was the approval of this project. And now we're talking about approving a rooftop bar for the hotel that is almost fully constructed in the downtown. And I just want to say I'm proud of how far we came on the issue and all the work that went into it. So I hope this is successful. And I'm glad the Planning Commission went through some of those concerns, but I think this is cool.
So back to the original motion. Any additional comments? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to item 4.3, the Groovy Opportunity Mural. Adam?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just real quick, I want to confirm that on item 4.3, the motion was to recommend approval for the city liquor and entertainment license. I believe I only said city.
I believe the intent was to approve both the alcohol license and entertainment license.
Great, thank you.
For 4.2.
Let's see, Groovy Art Mural, item 4.3. So this is a collaborative effort with MSU Department of Art, History, and Design to install murals at the Division Street Garage. In 2019, the mural installation began and was installed at the garage. And just as a reminder, The DDA has allocated $10,000 for art in the downtown for fiscal year 21, with $2,500 allocated for this project. That we just, staff would like to move forward with the mural art installation, the next round of installations this summer. I just want to say that the original plan was to begin in May, prior to the art festival, but since that has been pushed back to August, now the plan would be to start prepping in May and then have it installed, start the real installation prior to the arts festival so that the remaining portion can be viewed during the arts festival to be completed. And so with, again, with DDA support, staff would like to move forward with a mural installation at this location.
Thank you, Adam. I think this has been a great addition to the downtown. It's been a great cooperative relationship with the art department at MSU. It's allowed us an opportunity to create placemaking opportunities and to make interesting spaces in our downtown. I'm fully supportive of it. I don't know if anyone has any questions of staff or any concerns, but I would like to go ahead and support the expenditure as we have in the preceding two cycles and continue on with our relationship with the MSU Art Department to continue the mural. So I'll offer that as a motion and ask for a second.
Second.
It's been seconded by Luke. Any additional questions or comments to the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Let's move on to item 4.4, the consideration of a maintenance and use agreement for business support for downtown placemaking. Adam?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So, staff is requesting the DDA consider authorizing staff to execute maintenance and use agreements with downtown businesses, basically on an on-needed basis. So essentially what we're requesting is if we're able to install infrastructure in a public right-of-way, right? We want the flexibility to be able to approach businesses and say, hey, we'd like to install this infrastructure here, but we may need help with maintenance, cleaning a table or making, managing outdoor heaters, whatever that may be. And so it essentially formalized partnerships with the businesses and with clear expectations, increase the capacity of our team to install additional infrastructure outdoors, and also help with increasing the capacity for outdoor dining options, seating options, and businesses to serve downtown patrons. If you'd like an example, think of the 500 block pedestrian alleyway outside Campbell's Marketplace. We have public infrastructure out there. We would like to install more, and we'd like to provide flexibility to allow public infrastructure to be used in certain cases on private property under this maintenance and use agreements, which would require that infrastructure be open to the public at all times during normal business operations.
So I have a general question, Adam. If a business owner wishes to participate in a similar type of arrangement where they could have access to tables or heaters or whatever it happens to be, how would they go about that process? How would they enter into, one, let their interest be known and enter into a lease with the city?
Yeah, certainly. So the thought is, these would primarily be initiated by staff on an on-needed basis, but it's certainly open to any business that could approach us and has an idea. And if we have that infrastructure available, we would definitely consider that and enter into a maintenance and use agreement with that business.
So another question real quick. So we'll use the 500 block alleyway as an example. all the participating restaurants in that area would enter into a lease agreement. Is that the case?
Only those that, that would agree to, hey, yes, a lot of our patrons use these tables for outdoor dining, and we'd love to see more tables. So yeah, certainly we'd want to enter an agreement, and we'll help, wipe down the tables if, the city installs it. And so, yeah, it'd be open to any businesses. However, it wouldn't be necessary if, a business directly adjacent to the 500 block pedestrian alleyway said, yes, I'll enter into a maintenance and use agreement. It would not be necessary for every business on that block to enter into a maintenance and use agreement. Another example is, we want to do parklet systems this summer. And so we're already going to have constraints on placement of those parklet systems just based on parking and traffic flow and safety. And so once we narrow down some locations, then we're obviously going to engage with the business owners, number one, to see if they're supportive, but then number two, say, hey, we want to install this out here. We think this could benefit your business by A, B, and C. Would you be willing to enter into an agreement and help us by wiping down the tables? And then again, we'll provide that infrastructure.
Has this lease was drafted by the city attorney?
Correct.
Okay. Are there any questions from board members? So the action that we need to take today then, Adam, is to approve this lease?
Yeah, and allow authorized staff to execute those leases.
Okay. I'll make a motion to authorize staff to execute the leases and ask for a second.
Second.
It's been seconded by Luke. Jeff, did you have a question?
No, I was seconding.
Oh, okay. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? That's been passed unanimously. Thank you for the background, Adam. We will move on to item 4.5, consideration of various agreements and approvals effectuating the demolition of 314, 328, and 334 Evergreen Avenue and temporary use of the 314 and 328 Evergreen by Granger Construction for purposes related to the construction of the MSU Federal Credit Union commercial office building on the adjacent city parking lot number 4.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I'm just going to summarize what this request is. So essentially, staff are recommending that the DDA approve, the agreement for shared demolition costs with MSU FCU to share the costs related to demo. We're also requesting to authorize the chair to enter into a contract with Granger Construction with DDA costs not to exceed $100,000 for the demo of 314, 328, and 334 Evergreen Avenue. That contract would be in a form approved by the city attorney. Also part of this request is authorize the reallocation of up to $100,000 of project development funds from the to be determined sidewalks and sidewalks line accounts towards the cost of demolition of 314, 328, and 334. Also, authorize the chair to execute a 19-month license agreement with Granger Construction or MSU FCU for the staging of construction equipment and materials at 314 and 328 Evergreen Avenue. That license agreement would be, there would be $5,100 per month coming in through that agreement. And of course, that agreement would be in a form approved by the city attorney. And if you guys would like, we can walk through each section of the agenda item report. Again, I stated the request. If you recall, see in our January meeting, we The DDA directed staff to renew the leases at 340 and 344 and to press pause on 314 and 328. This allowed for ongoing discussions on what to evaluate the demolition cost. But this also led into discussions with MSU FCU, where we're aware of the logistical issues going on with an adjacent property owner. And so through conversations, we were thinking that, the proposal of alternative one that's stated in the memo would help solve both those challenges as far as the DDA's desire to demo the properties and to allow the MSU FCU project to come to fruition. Again, it would be a 50-50 split between MSU, FCU, and DDA for the demolition costs. There'd be an executed 19-month lease agreement for the staging area that would bring in approximately $97,000, and an agreement to allow the use of Lot 4 for city parking operations until commencement of construction. The alternatives that we're discussing today, so the information that were included in the analysis was based on the laydown lease, those terms, the demolition agreement terms for 314 and 328. Obviously, the current property conditions, 314's in need of significant improvements, capital improvements in the immediate future. And so what we did were we analyzed some of the revenues and expenses based on current situation, current data, and the best available data to analyze each alternative. And we did that over a 10-year period. And so what you can see up on the screen is if we select alternative one, which is demolition of the Evergreen properties 314, 328, 334, with that Granger lease and the MSU project coming to fruition, this is what the 10-year revenues look like based on our analysis, 10-year expenses, and then a simple subtraction, come up with the 10-year gain or loss. For alternative number two, this is assuming no demolition with no MSU FCU project. And so you can see the 10-year revenues from that alternative, the 10-year expenses, which are significantly higher, and then the 10-year gain or loss, which is significantly lower than alternative one. Here are some of the key items that we wanted to highlight based on this analysis. So the selection of alternative one would help with temporary and ongoing net revenues. So over the 10-year period, as I stated, the revenues are projected to be higher than alternative one. We have a partner that is willing to cover up to $100,000 of the demo cost. The DDA capture of local mills. So that's assuming the MSU FCU project comes to fruition. Those are the mills the DDA would capture from that project. Also the local mills the DDA would bring in, and then the income from the license for the property for the staging area. We would avoid costs, the property management costs that are associated with those properties. The property taxes would decrease. Maintenance and repair obviously would be pretty much eliminated, except for maybe some lawn care costs for a vacant property. But this also, will save us money in the long run as time continues to go on, costs continue to go up if we, if we were to consider demolition in the future. And so, alternative one also is going to further the DDA's goals for the Park District redevelopment, that whole area. And that's especially if the MSU FCU project comes to fruition. It's really going to further activate that space and drive foot traffic. We'll have a lot of office workers. The properties themselves, they're going to be more desirable to a developer and for redevelopment, since a demolition will have already occurred. Alternative 2, where basically those assumptions are status quo. We just continue to move forward as is over the next 10 years. And so based on all these considerations in this analysis, again, staff is recommending that the DDA approve the chair to enter a contract with Granger Construction with DDA costs not to exceed $100,000 for the demo 314, 328, and 334. Authorize a reallocation of up to $100,000 of project development funds from projects to be determined in sidewalks, and allocate it towards the cost of demolition of 314, 328, 334. Authorize the chair to execute a 19-month lease agreement with Granger Construction or MSU FCU for the staging of construction equipment and materials at 314 and 328. And then, of course, a summary of the financial analysis is included in this agenda item report. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Adam, I'm sure there will be multiple questions of board members. I do want to start with one immediate question, and then we'll turn it over. And I know we have others that have called in that should there be questions, we can have board members can direct them to those that have called in. But my immediate question is, we presently have an exclusive arrangement with River Caddis with regard to the possibility of redeveloping the Evergreen properties. And I want to know what city staff communication or comments they've received from River Caddis on what has been proposed.
Yeah, based on staff conversations with River Caddis, my understanding is they would be supportive of this plan. So that's based on my understanding.
Okay. And if you would be kind enough, Adam, just so I can see everyone on the screen, can you minimize the memo so I can see people that wish to speak? And if you want to ask questions of staff, if you could just raise your hand. Or are there any questions of staff with regard to the proposal? Mayor Stevens.
Thank you. So could you expand a little bit on, I suppose, Peter's question in regards to Rivers Caddis, their stance on this issue, and then I guess further down the line, I mean, what does this mean for the potential of future development there? Does that basically mean that a project could not start up until, the end of construction at the MSU?
I see that Tom Fehrenbach has also joined us. Tom?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Stevens. Yes, the River Caddis folks are in support of the general plan here. I think ultimately we'd want some flexibility as we get into sort of the later months of the agreement to be able to coordinate any access that they may need to the property. Presumably, there'd be time that would need to occur for them to submit and receive approvals through the planning entitlement process, as well as the building process. There'd also presumably be the demolition of 340 and 344 Evergreen, along with the tenants' relocation there. So I think there's a fair amount of time that gives us flexibility, and as we would approach the details of the agreement with the city attorney, I think those would be things we would want to make sure that we had their blessing on. But overall, They are supportive of the concept.
And I mean, so in your mind, if we were to be leasing out these buildings anyway, we'd have folks that would be in there, and obviously they wouldn't be able to start construction. I mean, that would be a lesser timeline than 19 months, but you imagine kind of the combination of all of those things would lead to a similar timeline anyway?
I do. And I think, clearly, and Mr. Pearson could speak to this more, but clearly the main issue would be the need for the use of the crane and how long they would need that crane to sit there and when the crane would need to be removed to make way for access to the property from another developer. My understanding is that's sort of in the 11 or 12-month timeframe, which is aligned with, I think, the sense of when potentially a site plan would be submitted and the amount of time it would take to go through the city's process for both the entitlement as well as the building permit approval. So I think, certainly the city has indicated that we'd like to have some flexibility there, and we'd like to be able to coordinate between the two developers. And I think there's a general sense that is accomplishable.
Okay,
Thank you.
great.
I'm going to call people in the order in which I see their hands raised. So I think Michael Kruger and then Jim Kroom.
I guess my question goes back to the River Caddis agreement. If that were to be, so are we going to need to extend that exclusivity until this project is complete?
It's really a separate matter for the DDA's consideration, as that exclusivity ends in, I believe, the end of June.
July.
Right. No, I understand that. So that means essentially what we're doing is we're going to ride that out, and then come the end of July, we got to decide whether or not we're going to extend it another. I mean, they're going to clearly want until the MSCSU project is complete before they can really, if not longer than that, obviously, in order to do their due diligence to see what's going to go on with that, I would assume. And so are we then putting ourselves in another position to have to have that agreement for another 18 to 24 months at that point?
Not necessarily. I don't think those things are necessarily, tied. The fact that the property is being used for construction staging for the one project doesn't stop someone else from investigating it for use and creating plans and drawing up diagrams and site plans, et cetera. So it's really just the coordination between the actual building where you would need the access to that property. That's where there becomes the coordination that needs to occur.
I was going to say the similar thing is that, I mean, in some ways this can be done concurrently. This is actually, I think, facilitating the future development, because the infrastructure and area and streets around it are being done now, which removes a huge burden that was always on that parcel. And now the parcel will be clear of its buildings and level. So I think it makes it more likely that it can be developed in the near future. But certainly you need that time when the construction is going on to do plans, reviews for planning commission, all those things to happen. And I think that provides that this can be done concurrently. And I actually think this would facilitate development and redevelopment.
Jim?
Hi, great questions by all. Wondering, and good to know that the staff has communicated with River Caddis, but communication might fall short of their agreement or stipulation to this proposal. And were I in their shoes, I wonder why they wouldn't argue at the end that they ought to be entitled to an extension of their exclusive agreement past its expiration in July, because the DDA has thwarted the essential purpose of that exclusivity. That, in other words, that they can't do a project. It's nice for us to think, gee, they'll be willing to wait and this helps out. But the flip side is they can argue it didn't help us at all. It actually thwarted the purpose of the contract, and we're entitled to, I don't know what their relief would be, another exclusive period that allows them the opportunity they would have otherwise had to develop this property in a more timely fashion. And I know we all may smile and say, well, look, that thing's been delayed and delayed, so why wouldn't they agree? But I don't know that I'm comfortable guessing about that. If we wanted to do this, it'd be more elegant to have them sign on and agree that it does not affect in any way the expiration of their current exclusivity agreement.
Should we ask the city attorney that question as well?
Is Mr. Homer on the call here? Yes, Mike?
Yeah, I think we could do that. I haven't been a party to those conversations with River Caddis, so I don't know to what extent they have indicated their approval. But, clarity is certainly always better than ambiguity down the line. So, it may be that the timing is such where they don't have an issue because even if they started today, it would be a very long while probably before they were to get approval on any project that would even be offered to the city. So, but we can certainly do that.
I see Mr. Pearson has his hand raised. David?
Just if I could add, there is flexibility also in the use of the property. So 314, the southern portion of it is needed for the crane, but the crane is not in use for the entire construction. And although Granger will be very unhappy with me when I say this, unfortunately, Jeff Tooley had to drop off the line. They don't have to have all of that for the entire 19 months. So if push came to shove and there were an issue with River Caddis having a deadline and actually needing to start construction, we have the ability, and that can be addressed in the license agreement to accommodate that. So we're not putting you in the position of, we don't want to put you in the position of losing the development of the DDA properties, for crying out loud. That has been so long hanging that the notion that this would push that out or knock out a project, I can assure you, we will find a way to address that. And so I'm hoping that isn't going to hold that up, because I think particularly because River Caddis is clearly pushing an office development, we know coming out of the pandemic, and I say that knocking on wood, since we all hope we're coming out, that office is not a boom right now. So we're assuming there will be additional time. But as I say, if they had an office development ready to go and we're in their way, we can work with them to make sure that does not go away.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Are there additional questions for staff? Any other comments? I see Luke and then Jim.
Jim, go ahead.
So on the estimates in the memo of the DDA capture of local mills beginning in 2023 and the capture of DDA mills in 2023, I'm hoping that staff can run through that a little closer. Are we anticipating that there'll be a tax increment financing plan associated with MSU FCU property?
No, sir. What you're seeing there is the DDA capture based from the DDA TIF Plan 2 that was put in place in 1991 and then amended again in 1996. There's no, to my knowledge, any consideration of doing a brownfield TIF plan for the MSU FCU project.
Okay. And then what is the timeline? What is the urgency for agreeing to this demolition agreement today?
Well, there is a sense of urgency, but there is, I believe they need to close by April 6th.
Thank you.
And then, so how do we anticipate contracting with Granger? This document says that we shall enter into a license agreement with Granger. What if we can't? And then what about indemnification in connection with any kind of construction problem? I know that construction is done in cities all the time, and we've just done it or seen it done here on 2 properties, and knock on wood, and to the credit of those operations, there were no issues, no damages that occurred in connection with the construction. But where will the indemnification, will there be indemnification that comes from MSU FCU or Granger down the road in connection with this project, because we would be allowing Granger to use this property in a contract or license that's yet to be determined. So how does that all work?
David Pearson has his hand raised.
We have draft form of license for both the parking lot to the city and for the DDA to the either Granger or the credit union for the staging area. Those include basically the same indemnity clauses going either way. So yes, the indemnity would be covered for that. And if I may, the purchase agreement with the city, which was extended previously, did call for and currently calls for an April 6th outside closing date. So that's the reason the credit union wants to go ahead and close, so that it can then get everything in order to start construction. The current schedule would have that start in August.
And I'm not sure if Mike Homier or Scott Hogan, if you wanted to expand on that at all.
Sure. The license agreement that we're negotiating involves both the duty to defend, indemnify, and hold harmless, and also Granger has to name the DDA as an additional insured on its insurance policies.
Thank you. I see Luke had his hand up previously, and George as well. Luke, did you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, thank you. So many. I'll try to keep it brief. When I'm looking at the numbers, I guess I want a little bit, not necessarily better understanding for myself, but if we could go over it just a little bit, just so it's clear and out in the open. I just not seeing. So is it 1.5 or 1.9 million dollars of net income over 10 years for alternative one? And
1.9.
Okay. And can you explain a little bit where that's coming from and why it's over the course of 10 years when it's only going to be staged for 18 months?
I was just trying to demonstrate over a long term and what it would look like, especially if we continue down with leasing out the properties. Where that number comes from is just essentially taking the revenue projections minus the expense projections to get that 10-year gain loss.
Okay. Okay. And then with the 357, so alternate two, that roughly $360,000 over the course of 10 years of rents, is that subtracting what we put into the property, or is that just rent?
Again, yeah, that's just the revenue projections minus those expense projections, which include everything.
So it does include expenses?
What's that?
So it does include expenses?
It includes the expenses that are outlined on that summary sheet. The property management, the utilities, repairs and maintenance, capital improvements, taxes, permits, licenses, and assessments, and staff cost. It does not include the cost of demolition.
Okay. It just seems like that 10 years on alt one is just inflating like numbers in a big way that might not really make sense over the course of 10 years. Like any number of things could happen after the staging, right?
Absolutely. But those are unknowns at this time.
Sure, but this isn't guaranteed.
Well, could I just, is this including taxes from MSU's project or not?
The revenue projections include the tax capture from the MSU FCU project.
Yeah,
which
so that's
supplement the revenues we would lose from renting out the properties.
So we're trading diminishing returns of rental property for a known larger return of property taxes from a large office building that's captured in the district. That's the trade-off we're looking at here. We're not in the property management building business anymore. We're not investing in old buildings. MSU FCU is paying taxes.
Correct.
But that's not on this land. Like that's under the assumption that MSU will not happen unless we give them this land. Is that correct?
But that's the case we're in.
Yeah.
Thank you, George.
Are there additional questions?
Yes, I would, Greg Ballline. I would just wanted to expand a little bit on the projection of income. I see what the local capture is. I see it's 1.875 as far as the revenue on the taxes, but I see that the DDA is only gonna get $89,000 of that. Is that correct?
No, so that's the capture the DDA would get from the local mills, but then that special assessment of the DDA capture, that 1.7007 millages that the DDA captures. And that agreement, these agreements were established in that TIF plan number 2.
TIF plan number 2. Okay, so you're saying the local capture, the amount of money that flows back through the DDA, if we demolish these properties during this 10 years, will be 2366792. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay, and that comes to us via the budget, and it will be at our expenses, correct? I mean, it will be within our budget, and we can expend it any way we wish.
Yeah, within the confines of the law, but yeah.
Yeah, of course. Of course. I guess I'm still kind of out there on this whole thing. I think I'm going to be voting no on this for a number of reasons. I think we as DDA members are kind of being forced to make a decision to our own financial detriment to facilitate a project that just might not happen. Do I want it to happen? Absolutely. And if you recall, I was the only board member to vote emphatically yes on the approval of the MSU-FCU project. But I have to ask, why should the DDA tear properties down that are currently making money to pay our horrible debt we have inherited? Not sure who did the fuzzy math on this one, but this in its current format is a lose-lose for the DDA. Not only would we have to demolish structures helping us to make our bond payments, we would have to pay $100,000 for the privilege of doing so with no remuneration provided for the lost income from renting these properties. Let alone will they actually build it? This is cart before the horse here. May I remind you, MSU-FCU has over a year to close on this property, but has decided not to. What if it doesn't get built? Are we left with a huge hole in our downtown for 12 years like City Center 2? Previous DDAs have already approved 3 different projects on the Evergreen properties over the span of ownership, only to be either not approved or have restrictions put in place by City Council that make the project financially unviable. How can anyone look at the evidence of the past and assume a project will actually get built on these properties? We, as a DDA, need to be financially prudent for the entire DDA members. If we go down this path with this, we will be financially forced to accept a project that may or may not be economically viable because we can't afford to do anything else with the Evergreen properties than build 250,000 square feet of spec office space. We have paid millions, some say more than 7 million in debt service on these properties, and we still owe over 5 million. I'm not a mathematician, but I do know that if a private business were run this way, we would have gone bankrupt years ago. Look, I want this as much, if not more, than all of you. And I mean no disrespect for city officials in trying to find a resolution to a problem. However, the history of the Evergreen properties and what might take place on this site is epic and probably will be written about in future generations. We cannot make decisions to the financial detriment of the DDA based on hope or wishes. It is my recommendation that we discuss this in detail, get some real numbers on actual net income to the DDA, and defer to a future meeting. It is only prudent. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Smith and then George Lahanas.
I was going to jump in. I was waiting before, but
Go ahead, George.
yeah, I just want to say, I think we can say with some certainty that if we're worried about this project happening or not, if we don't do this, this project will not happen. So we have what's before us, the most exciting project likely in the downtown in my over 20 years here. the ability to bring a large-scale office, purpose-built building into the downtown. This is the game changer for the direction and the diversification of the downtown that we've talked about since I've been here over 20 years. And now we have it in front of us. And this is exactly why MSUFC is going to move forward. They have gone through all the steps, designing, purchasing, putting the ballot initiative on the ballot of the residents so the residents could approve this. They have done nothing but move forward with the utmost deliberate nature of making sure that they're going to move forward with this. This is I think, a small pivot for the DDA in demolishing properties perhaps a little bit earlier than we wanted to in order to facilitate this great project. The opportunity to benefit from tax revenue to the DDA, we saw, I think, a number of $750,000 of tax capture. This alone would produce, I think, $200,000 of tax revenue per year to the DDA. This is a game changer in terms of future opportunities to do things in the DDA. It will help more than offset any lost income from these older buildings that we're still managing. And I can't see how this is not the best thing that the DDA has had dropped in its lap in terms of an opportunity here. So to keep a bunch of old buildings there with the hope that we'll one day get another great office project, when we have one right in front of us, I can't see not voting yes on this and doing it now.
Thank you, George. Jeff?
Yeah, thank you. I would just like to look back at what our mission is here at the city. Renting student housing is probably not high on that list. In fact, I would argue that it's probably nowhere on the list. Our mission and, I hope, strategic plan for the city and for this DDA is to find ways to improve the character and the well-being of the downtown and to flatten any seasonality that may occur from the college or the university, ebb and flow of students being here or not being here, to create a year-round, full-time, sustainable economy. This opportunity probably isn't going to stick around much longer. MSUFC is probably putting in an awful lot of money to accommodate the adjustments that need to make here in order to satisfy some neighbor disputes and to move along with this project. Not alone, or let alone the timing issue and keeping this project delayed is costing, I would bet, a fair amount of money here. So I think timing is extremely important. Waiting is probably not in our best interest. Although I do agree that finding the exact numbers here is important. However, forecasts are not exact. So we won't be able to come up with a perfect solution there from a financial standpoint. Lastly, I just want to very quickly reiterate.
Jim, would you mind muting?
The importance of knowing if this project moves forward or doesn't move forward. We're not in a position where we have to tear the buildings down, right? We'll know come what was the date? April
6th.
April 6th, if this is moving forward or not. And if it isn't, then we'll not necessarily need to tear the buildings down. Is that accurate?
Correct.
And Tom wants to weigh in here. Tom Fairbaugh.
Yes, that is the clarification I just wanted to raise, that all of these agreements are intended to be tied to the closing of the sale, which would be when MSUFC would then transfer $810,000 to the city of East Lansing and take ownership of that property, presumably strengthening the argument that they are moving forward with the building. If for whatever reason that did not happen, then we would not need to effectuate these agreements. And essentially we'd be in the status quo of having the DDA properties not demolished and be able to continue to lease them. We'd likely be out a few months that would take, that we couldn't market them, but that would be essentially it.
So in a white hot market, as the LSJ would suggest, renting them is probably not going to be an issue. My point is there is very little risk and an awful lot of reward in this situation for the DDA and for the city. And I can't see how we couldn't possibly consider this. And as we look at, future generations, and I won't go into too much detail here for the impact of this project, but if our grandchildren are looking back at this and suggest that we let a project go because we were wanting to hold on to a student rental project as a DDA, that'll be an awfully significant burden for me to bear, and I won't let that happen.
Thank you, Jeff. Any additional comments? David Pearson.
I guess I just wanted to mention that, and it really partially repeats what Jeff said, which is MSU FCU needs this agreement in order to know that it can build its building. Without these agreements, that can't happen. And so that's why that's needed. And once we have those, then yes, we can go ahead and close on the property knowing that we can build the building. By the same token, the credit union does not want to pay $100,000 to help you demolish properties or pay $100,000 for licenses for staging unless it's building the building. So if the license agreement or the other were to indicate that in essence, the credit union agrees that the demolition and the licensing are ineffective if the building isn't going to be built, there's certainly no objection. That's precisely the reason to enter into them. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, David. Is there anyone else wishing to offer comments or any questions? Luke Hackney?
Yeah, can I, a few for Mr. Pearson, if he wouldn't mind. Can you just kind of walk me through? I just want to make sure that we did acknowledge this. I know it came late, but it's still it's still an email from the lawyers on behalf of Dublin Square. Why wouldn't MSU FCU have gotten the easement from Vlahakis in advance?
He's refused to give it.
Okay. So this was brought to his attention, I mean, before this was a public knowledge, before this was
yes,
brought to the
yes.
city. Okay.
Did you have additional questions, Luke, or?
Can I offer a motion, Chair?
I know, thank you.
Yeah. George, do you wish to offer a motion?
Yeah, could I offer that approval of various, so is the motion first, what is written in 4.5, approval of various agreements and approvals effectuating the demolition of 314, 328, and 334 Evergreen Avenue and the temporary use of 314 and 328 Evergreen by Granger Construction for purposes related to the construction of the MSU FCU commercial office building on the adjacent city parking lot number 4.
That is one motion for the variety of agreements that need to occur, which were outlined in the staff memo. And I'll second your motion. Are there any questions with regard to the motion or any statements? Okay, if we could, yes, Kristen?
I guess I'm struggling with the city lot 4 in the motion, just because we do have some knowledge of other things going on, and it does appear that 314 and 328 Evergreen would be large enough to assist with that. I'm not sure why we need to add in the lot at this point.
Thank you, Kristen. Can staff speak to Kristen's question?
We're not adding in lot 4, so the agreement would be allowed to allow the city to continue to use lot 4 up until the commencement of the construction. Lot 4 is where the MSU FCU building will be constructed. Does that answer your question, Kristen?
Yeah.
Thank you. Any additional questions? So we have a motion from George. It's been Luke.
Yeah, I'm sorry to keep asking questions.
Oh, you're good.
Just so I'm clear, can the sale agreement be extended by the council at any time now?
It's been extended already. They could go back and extend it again if that was their preference and if MSU wants to ask again.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We do have a motion that's been moved and supported. Are there any additional questions about the motion? Hearing none, can we take a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Jackie Babcock,
Yes.
Greg Ballline,
You know, it was a fairly simple cloud-based solution. It took 6 or 8 months.
Greg Ballline. We'll come back to you. Kristen Clark,
Yes.
Private institution and just go, hey, come on.
Jim Croom,
Yes.
Peter Dewan,
Yes.
Luke Hackney,
No.
Michael Kruger,
Yes.
George Lahanas,
Yes.
Ruben Levinson,
Yes.
Jeff Smith,
Yes.
and Mayor Stevens.
Yes.
Greg Ballline.
That would be a no.
Thank you. The motion passes 9-2.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the callers that came on and answered questions for us. We'll move on to item 5.1, the consideration of a third amendment to the Center City Master Development Agreement. Adam?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. If you recall, the third amendment to the MDA came before the MDA came before the DDA in February. There were some revisions that were requested to address some issues, which our city attorney has done. It went back, the agreement went back to City Council and was approved again. And so it's here for your consideration for approval. And then Mike Homier is on the line if you have any questions.
Yeah, Mr. Homier, can you walk us through exactly what the changes are that the council took action on?
Sure, and you'll see that in a red line version in your packet as well. Mr. Kroom pointed out an ambiguity in that agreement, so we went back to that, resolved, I believe, the ambiguity with respect to that, and made other technical changes with respect to the form, presented or represented that to the City Council, and as Mr. Cummins said, City Council approved this revised version. The developer has also approved of it, not signed it yet, but approved of the revised form as well. And I think that this, on a going forward basis, will ensure that that building is leased only to tenants, at least one of whom will occupy those units and is age 55 years or older.
Okay. Are there questions for Mr. Homier?
Can I jump in, please?
Yes, go ahead, Luke.
Once again, I think I will make a motion to recuse Mr. Ballline from this discussion, as he is landlord on this property.
It's been moved by Luke and supported by Michael Kruger to recuse Greg Ballline. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you, board.
Thank you. Were there additional questions for the city attorney?
Chair, I have a motion.
Yeah, thank you for taking that. Mayor Stevens?
I would like to move approval of the third amendment to the Center City Master Development Agreement as outlined in our staff memo.
Is there a second?
Support.
It's been supported by Jim Kroom.
Just want to speak to the issue really quick, Chair.
Please do.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate the further clarification here. And I appreciate the further clarification on behalf of our city attorney. Really want to make sure that we're doing this right and that, nobody in the future has to deal with this issue. So thank you.
Great. Any additional comments? So it's been moved and supported by the mayor and Jim Kroom. All those in favor of the changes to the consideration of the third amendment to the Center City Master Development Agreement, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. And we'll move on to committee reports and invite Greg Ballline back. We didn't have a meeting with Exec and Finance, nor was there a meeting for Public Policy and Market Development. And the items that we addressed today were addressed during our Project and Infrastructure Committee meeting held on March 18th. Luke, can you speak to any issues with the parking task force?
Parking task force, we just went over the parking budget, and we discussed moped parking, permits, etc. But unfortunately, we couldn't reach any sort of consensus. I'm hoping to meet with city staff and meet with Caleb soon and see how we can resolve some of these issues and really see how the parking test can actually be effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. And Jim Kroom, Downtown Management Board.
Thank you, Chair. Briefly, the Downtown Management Board is considering a proposed renewal of the Downtown Management Board Special Assessment. The recommendation will likely be that we hold it level for 2 years, considering the current economic environment. Also looking at the concept of a staycation and have businesses that are planning to participate in that, including a hotel with some discounted rates for folks that, and some events that would be coupled with that. So folks could actually check into a hotel and stay in town and enjoy the downtown. And then as a final matter, happy to announce that 2 new businesses opened in downtown East Lansing for Crepe's sake. And the Edge, which is in the Ann Street Plaza or behind it, and serves healthy smoothies. So that's my report.
Thank you very much, Jim. Are there any board member comments or concerns? Mayor Stevens, did you have any remarks?
No, I apologize. I just wanted to, I'll just say, since he asked, I'm really happy that those 2 businesses opened up, and I actually really like the idea of a staycation. It's actually something that, you know, if we make it affordable for folks, I think it encourages, you know, very cool behavior. So thanks.
Great. We're going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting, but we do have a brownfield meeting following. So I'd like to, it's now, I have 2 o'clock. If we could take maybe a 5-minute break before we jump back into the Brownfield Authority meeting. And that will be a separate link that's been sent to everyone. I move to adjourn the meeting and ask for a second.
Support.
It's been supported by Luke. All those in favor say aye.
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 Meeting's adjourned, and we'll see you back at 2:05 for the Brownfield meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.